All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nonprofit Enthusiasts Live. We are so excited to be here. So today we're going to continue the conversation on measurement and evaluation. And we have Mr. Joe Tolliver with us. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm
Thanks for
so
having me.
excited. I feel like it's been a while since we've been on together, so I'm excited
I know,
for
I
this
think it was just last
conversation.
month, right? We were on
Was
together
it?
last month.
Okay,
Yeah.
too long
Too
though.
long, that's way too long.
Yep.
Now, this is
Okay.
I'm glad to be here. It's been a minute. I'm glad that we're going to be talking about this subject because I think it's very important. And I am looking at the trends, and a lot of organizations are looking for impact. And so that's going to be a great conversation to have today.
Yeah. So before we dive in, if you are here, just drop a hey, how you doing in the chat box so that we know that you're here. If you're catching a replay, give us a hashtag replay so that we know that you are catching it on replay. And before we get started and just jump into this conversation on measurement and evaluation, which I am so excited to talk about, I want to give a special thanks to this month's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live sponsor, Catalyst Event Coaching, that focuses on empowering nonprofits and small businesses through training to execute successful events. And Shamika with Catalyst will be on with us on the 27th, the last Thursday of the month. So she'll be joining us and we'll talk a little bit more. But the other thing I want to share is make sure you stay until the end to learn how you can win a strategy session with Catalyst Event Coaching. So there's going to be a giveaway happening and we'll talk more about that at the end of the live today. So Joe, let's get talking measurement and evaluation. I know for many organizations, this is a conversation that you either love or you hate. Like it's either one or the other. Oh, I gotta evaluate. So let's just talk about what does measure. What is the importance of measurement and evaluation to you?
It's the ability to measure how well you're doing, or how not well you're doing, really, and specifically around your programming. And it's information you really want to know. But I'm finding, and this is not new, that most funders are looking for that information as well. They want to know how well your efforts are going with the folks that you're working with. And so should you.
Love it. So you mean it's not just getting the money. Funders want to actually see what impact, how well our programs are doing as well.
They absolutely do. And because, you have a certain responsibility in terms of the money that you're receiving from these funders. But I know that that's easier said than done. There are a lot of challenges to evaluation, but there's a lot of ways that folks miss in the evaluation process that's kind of easy to do. And we'll talk about some of those later on in the conversation, some of the strategies that I've used to get the information that I needed in order to do programming that really created the kind of impact the folks that I was serving need, right? Because that's why we're out there. We're trying to impact these folks. We're trying to change their lives. And if we're putting out programming that kind of works for my staffing, but doesn't really work or doesn't create the impact for the folks that we hope to serve, then I think that's where we need to put a pin in it and be able to kind of look at it realistically and start to value what evaluation can do for your organization. Not only that, but also what evaluation can do for the folks that you serve.
Love it. And I remember last week when Debbie was on and we were talking about program evaluation, something she talked about is because we always think about program, measurements and evaluation working. We always think about the success of it. The numbers are going to grow, but how often do we think about it not working and when to adjust and how to adjust our programs? So can you talk a little bit about that? When you are measuring, you're evaluating your programs and it's not as successful as you anticipated it to be. And I know some of the conversation that we had was talking about if sometimes you have to go talk to your funder and kind of, have that open, transparent conversation. Can you talk a little bit from your experience as to what does that look like when the measurements and, when they are not going the way that you initially anticipated it to?
So let's talk about it in two frameworks. The first,
Mhm.
a couple of different frameworks. The first framework I would say is you're talking about an organization that's been funded by a local government, or that is an award that is restricted. It's grant funded, local government, there's all kind of restricted. So when I say that, that means you're delivering a program that's specifically what the funder wants you to do. So
Mhm.
there are built-in outcomes that you must meet, right? And there are built-in evaluation tools that you must use. So there is no getting around that, right? So that's one framework to look at it. You have to do specifically. In order to be successful at a grant like that, you have to have the organizational capacity to be able to do that. That's why some organizations will actually get the grant, but not do well at delivering the grant because they don't have the capacity to be successful. So that's one framework. The other framework is that you could have a program that you're running and you're using an evidence-based model with this group, but that evidence-based model is not effective with the group. You begin to tweak it to make it more effective. Is it still considered an evidence-based model? No, it's not, because you've moved away from the rigor that's suggested by the folks who develop it. So it's a couple of different things that you can get snagged up in the evidence-based model. Oftentimes when we are operating our nonprofit organizations and we have developed our own models in itself, that's where we can even fall down an even greater slippery slope. Because oftentimes nonprofit agencies, especially grassroots, haven't built in evaluation tool to evaluate the program that they are actually implementing. That program could be doing a great job. It could be excellent out there. It could be making a complete impact. But because they haven't measured it, they can't tell the full story. They may be able to tell the anecdotal part of the story of the impact they're creating, but they can't show the data that's necessary. Therefore, when it comes back to getting more funding or getting increased funding, the funders are going to ask for what impact you made. And your stories, your anecdotal stories, won't be enough. So I hope that was able to, I know that was long-winded, right? But I had to talk to you about how you look at it in a couple of different ways. But yeah, that's pretty much the way that evaluations and evidence-based programming works in the market in which we exist today.
So starting out as a new organization, how important do you feel it is to have measurement in mind when planning your programs? Like, if you can talk a little bit about that, because sometimes the first thing, oftentimes I hear two things. One is, hey, I want to be compliant with my filings and all of that, and then when I'm done, I want to go after grants. That's how but in that initial stage, can you talk a little bit about why it may be important to think about how you're going to measure the effectiveness of your program, and the importance of doing so?
Well, in order to measure the effectiveness of your program, one of the first steps is that you have to have a program design. Just because you've been operating a program a certain way or doing it a certain thing, that is not a program design in itself. And when you do develop that program design, it must include evaluative tools. And a lot of organizations find it very difficult to get to that place. They find it hard to find the value in it. And I've talked about it on several occasions, that something as simple as looking at what problem your organization hopes to solve, what contributes to that problem, then what is your organization's strategy to solve that problem? And then if you can figure out the strategy, Lashina, what are specific actions that are associated with those strategies, right? And if you do all of that, what do you expect to get at the end? What are your outcomes? What impact do you expect to create? And so you got to be able to put that in play as you're running your program. That is not something you do as an afterthought. That's something you build in as you go, whether you do pre and post testing, whether you do focus groups, whether you do online surveying. No matter what tool you use, which is determined by your target groups, you have to put something in play, but you can't even do it unless you have a program design that you can actually evaluate. And you guys oftentimes who are working in grassroots agencies have great programs. They're effective, they're impactful, but you can't effectively tell your story because you don't have evaluations attached to it.
I will say what you're describing almost sounds like a logic model.
Well, it definitely is. It definitely is a logic model. It definitely is a logic model. It's really about a theory of change, how you plan to make a change in the lives of the people that you serve, and whether or not you're actually making an impact doing it. It's so simple. The logic model has been around since the 70s. The Pentagon was one of the first organizations, governmental organizations, to actually utilize the logic model. There are so many different types of logic models out there, Lashina. If somebody goes and Google logic model, they're gonna get a logic model that's gonna tell you so many different aspects of how to evaluate something. What I try to do in the way that I describe it is to try to give you a simple, user-friendly way to develop a logic model around your program. All I want you to do as a nonprofit leader is get to a place where you have a sense of completes. And the way that you get to that sense of completes is getting all that programming and all that great passion that you have that's in your head onto paper. Onto paper that's somewhere that you can look at it on a consistent basis and be active in the things that it's asking you to do. Not only active, but intentional. And so that's kind of my thought pattern on how we transition these grassroots organizations and prepare them for the resources that are available to them now. I would hate for you to be in a situation where all these resources come along but you're not prepared to receive them. And not having a program designed that you can evaluate really puts you in a position to not have that opportunity happen.
Love it. And I love it. And I just had to bring up logic model because especially as a grassroots organization, that's a tool. If you have that in place from the very beginning, I'm telling you, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But I will say, and I'm biased, but I'm not biased here in the sense of, so many of you know, I've started my own organization back in 2012. And the logic model that we use through Nonprofit Enthusiasts, it is absolutely amazing. Yes, you can look up many different ones. You can look it up. But the ones that we use and Joe earlier described, like the pieces that we're kind of looking at, it's very special and it does a lot. The other day we had an organization, they finished this process, and then I picked up the newspaper and they used the information from that logic model to kind of help tell their story. So I know we're talking about performance measurement, but then this logic model logic models help bring that clarity as to what should we measure and how should we measure it. No matter how we try to avoid this process, we always end up coming back to it. I've heard it where, sometimes it'll be like, hey, you know what, we're going to just go after that grant first, and then we'll come back and formalize the process or build the foundation for the organization. And guess what? Your funder is going to send you right back to building that foundation. Or if you get the funding, you might not be able to sustain it because it's not well thought out. So one thing I like to, you all know I like food. So I always talk about when you go to a restaurant, what would you buy if there's nothing on the menu? So I like the fact that a logic model helps lay out what's your programs, what's the services, what we're going to provide, what problems are we addressing. I love that because now you got food to sell, right? So now when you go to your funders in these different places and build, different models for funding, you got things to actually sell. And this brings that clarity and that sense of completeness that Joe's talking about, being able to feel like, you're not just running. So I just wanted to kind of stop there really quick and just share that, especially for newer organizations, because a lot of time it's two things that I hear common is I want to get filing in place and I want to go after grants. That's the two most common things I hear. It's like, well, after I do that, I want to jump straight to that. And there's a whole list of things in between that has to get completed to prepare you for that grant and so that you can keep that grant going. So I just want to take a little moment and just talk a little bit about that, especially because you were, you described the program design process, and so I just wanted to share that and how it can be important in building your measurements and so forth.
No, all good stuff, Lashina. You're right on the money. Really, when you talk about this, we have to talk about it in the framework of the program. You can't just talk about evaluation and measurement without talking about the program. And I think sometimes in the nonprofit world, we get folks on a more academic level that talks a lot about the logic model, the evaluation tool, the impact, the leaning towards good, and all of those great things. And they all are important and they all make sense. But sometimes we forget about the precursor to that, and that's the program in itself. What if I don't have a program? What difference does it make about measurement tools? What am I measuring if I don't have a defined, clear program? So I can't even talk to you about measurement tools until I can talk to you about that. So now, measurement tools, all right? So I just want to tell you a story, Lashina. Back in the day, when I did direct service, and you remember, right? Because you were there doing direct service. You were there back in the day. But Lashina, I don't know if I told you guys before, but Lashina and I have been working together for a long time. When she was a young person, she was one of the folks who participated in some of the programs that I was delivering in Broward County. And one of the things that we did was really look at different ways to get the information from the right people. It's one thing to just be collecting data, collecting information, but how do you get the information from the people that we really need to get information from? And some of those were groups that were hard to get, right? Hard to connect with. And so you have to think about different ways to connect. And I'll give you one crazy thing that I did. So one of the things that we were working on was working with youth and trying to get a sense of how our community felt about substance abuse, right? During this period of time when there was high incidence of ecstasy use. And we wanted to get an opinion from people, and we wanted to get opinion from people, from parents. That was a group that we were looking at to get information, to get feedback from as a bigger report. And so parents are very hard to get to come to places. Parents are very hard to connect with. And I'm sure anybody who work with children will agree and attest to that. But we learned early on, sometimes you can't expect people to come to you. You have to meet them where they are. So where are they? Well, we know that they are at their children's Optimist football games, Optimist basketball games. We know that they are at public events where you give out backpacks during the beginning of the school year. So when you talk about measurement tools, all I did was took a lollipop, attached it to 3 questions and said, hey, you could have this lollipop if you answer these 3 questions. And I say all of that, to say that these are different things. These are different tools. These are different ways that you can reach folks in order to get the information you need that's not going to kill you. I went to the Optimist game. It was a big football game. I passed out lollipops to get answers to surveys, and people were willing to do it. I was doing, maybe about 10 years ago, I was doing a capital campaign. And a part of a capital campaign, you have to do a community assessment, right? And they call it a feasibility study. And some of the groups that I targeted were elderly folks. And so one of the ways that I was able to get feedback and information from them was I would go to different facilities where elderly people would come during the day, maybe daycare, or maybe even go to these community centers that provided activities for elderly folks. And I would hold focus groups with elderly people. And I would use technology with elderly people. So Lashina, you remember the clickers that we used to use? I would use the clicker response cards and have elderly people respond to questions. And people say, oh, they're not going to do it. It's too much technology for them. But time and patience really worked to get the feedback I needed. So I say, since this segment is about tools and measurement, I just wanted to share with you a couple of ways that I've reached out and been able to get community feedback. And the last thing that I'll share with you is I kind of wanted to get an understanding what was going on in my community in terms of how our young people perceived what they saw in the community. So I did my own research study where I had folks go into liquor stores, not liquor stores, but convenience stores, and also liquor stores and restaurants to get a sense of what they could view. So it was more like they would go in, they would look at particular indicators that we had identified, and then they would acknowledge if they saw it or not. And that would give us an idea of what our community looked like. And we based it on the overall data that we were getting that was saying that most of our juvenile arrests were happening around liquor stores, were happening around pawn shops, were happening around convenience stores. So we wanted to see what our young people and what people in general would see at these stores. And that was some of the information that we were able to capture. So when we talk about tools and measurement, don't just isolate yourself to pre and post testing. There's so many ways to get information about your community that doesn't reside in just asking a pre and post questionnaire for somebody or asking for satisfaction surveying. So I wanted to share that because I know this topic is about measurement and tools, and I wanted to be open about how many different tools that you can use. Don't limit yourself, and don't believe that these hard to get groups are hard to get. You just may have to meet them where they are.
I love that you shared, I guess we can call it non-traditional ways to reach out. And that's important, especially when you're collecting information. You have to know your audience and where they are and how to get that information from them and make it convenient for them, so that it's easy for them. Okay, I'm already at my son's or daughter's game, so okay, while I'm here and waiting in the stands or whichever, let me just go ahead and complete the survey for you all and get myself a lollipop, or
Hey,
for my
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it worked out really well. We had a really good report that helped us. And then, one thing that we also did, and I'll tell you this last thing that we did, we actually put together a report. 33311 was the community that we looked at, and it was a health report. And we were able to look at, based on some of the data that we already had, to look at some of the health disparities that was happening in 33311 and put together a whole report that we actually put in a booklet and provided to our healthcare professionals in that area and to some of the community-based agencies based on the information from one community. And one of the things that we discovered that in 33311, which is a community in Broward County, that there were more people in the 33311 community with diabetes than the entire county. Those were huge numbers. Not only did we discover that, but we were able to publicize that, to put almost a highlight on it for organizations who work in healthcare to really take a look at, why that was happening in that particular community and then what they could do. So sometimes your assessment can be very important to a community. That was something that, yes, you could see it in data sets, but nobody was really telling the story. That ultimately led to funding. Where we could control some of those health disparities in that particular area. So when you think about your measurement tools and creating impact, those are really some great tools that can result in really creating the kind of intentional programs and services based off what the people say that you need. We can always assume what they need. We can look at the data and say, oh, they need this, this, and this, and this. But until we start asking those folks the questions about what they need, how do we truly know that we're providing the great work that they need, right? So I think it's also important when we're talking about our program design to really talk to the people and see what they need. And that can happen through using these types of evaluative tools. It's not just for your funder, it's for your organization, it's for your community. Just don't think about evaluating because you want to get a grant. Think about evaluating because you want to create real impact and you want to know if you're doing it, other than the fact that somebody comes and say, hey, you did such great things in my life. You want that, but you also want to be able to say, hey, listen, how did I do it? Because now you need to transfer that same skill to somebody else or to embellish that skill so other people can be able to have that opportunity. How are you going to do it? How are you going to duplicate it? How are you going to be able to do it? Because you don't know, you're throwing everything into the pot and hoping that it works. When you have a program that you can evaluate, you're throwing specific intentional things into a pot and you're being able to evaluate whether it works or not. So it's like having a headache, Lashina. I got a headache. I have a headache. Why do I have this headache? Because I didn't eat well. Okay. So what am I going to do about it? What is my strategy? My strategy is I am going to get on the Mediterranean diet, right? That's my strategy. Well, what's my action? Well, the first step that I'm going to do is actually I'm going to look up and see what the ingredients for Mediterranean diets are. And then I'm going to go to the grocery store and buy those ingredients. Well, those are the actions. Well, if I do the strategies and the actions, then what do I expect at the end? Not to have a headache. That's all it is. That's all we're asking you to do when you're developing a program logic model. And then all you're doing, because you're internally evaluating, you're saying to myself, okay, here's the problem that we're trying to solve. And here's what I want it to look like at the end. That's all it is.
Love it. Awesome. So before we head out, I mean, you shared a lot of really good information. We talked about program logic models. We talked about creative ways to get your different audience involved. Anything else you feel that you want to share before we wrap up for today?
Other than letting folks know that when I think about, and we could keep this, when I think about developing that evaluation tool and the different tools we use in the community, I say you do that for the impact. And I say that you do that because it also helps you move to a place of completes, right? I say those are two strong things that I will encourage you to look at when you're developing your own organization evaluation tools and how you're going to utilize it. Those are the things you look at. And also, I also would suggest to folks that evaluating your program is not that difficult. It sounds more difficult than it really is. And I would also say that if you need help or need support in those areas, that's why we're here at Nonprofit Enthusiasts. We are here to help walk you through those type of activities. And I guarantee you, once you have your logic model, Lashina, you can then develop your budget. And once you have your budget, you could then develop your marketing plan. And then once you have your marketing plan, you could then develop your fundraising activities that's going to go, because now you know what your program is, you know what your budget is, you know how you need to market it. So now you know how, now you need to figure out how you're going to fund it. And so having this logic model and having all these pieces in place really helps you get to a place where not only you become the best champion, but also it helps your board members become the best champion, because now they can definitively tell your story, right? Because it's all on one piece of paper. So.
Yep. And that's my favorite part of the process is, you know, when you're building your logic model, not doing it alone, you know, having your board and different stakeholders involved in the process. And by the end of the process, everyone has such clarity and can go out and advocate on behalf of the organization. And I love it.
I hope that something that I share, you know, folks raise your hand, let me know if something that I shared was helpful for you today. I know I said a lot.
Yeah, give us a like or drop something in the chat.
Let us know.
Yeah, you shared a lot of very good information that I hope, will help individuals listening.
And if anybody's challenged with something specific around measurement and evaluations, let us know. You know, give us a call. We have free consults where you can call us. We could talk to you for a little bit about what your experience. We also have a lot of programs that you can look at that we could actually help you develop your program logic model. That includes the evaluation plan. We can even take you all the way to your boilerplate. So it really just depends on what you need, but call us. So then we can help you walk it through. It costs you nothing to call us. And if you get Christina, it'll be a smooth conversation. You get me, you might be on the phone for a little while.
So yes, so I dropped the link in the chat box. Definitely schedule a call sometime with us. We do free consults. And I'll also say too, if you come across individuals that's also like, I don't know where to start with my organization, share the link with them, and they can schedule a call. And yes, the calls are with either myself or Joe. So you'll get one of us and we'll talk through your organization and help provide you guidance from there. And let me go ahead. I dropped the website, but I want to drop the actual let me also drop the console link so that way you can go straight to it if you need it. There we go. So we dropped that in there. Awesome.
So did
All
I get
right.
any burning questions from anybody?
I don't see any questions, but let me just go through really quick. We see Sabria says, so says I'll be calling for my baking therapy program. So we look forward to hearing from you. And said everything was great information. Thank you. Hey Shay, thank you. Good morning, Shay. Miss Kim said good morning. But I don't see any questions. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat box before we head out. I don't see any questions, but if you do have questions as well, you can use that link and schedule a consult, and we can have a one-on-one, learn more about your organization and help provide you some next steps and guidance there. All right, before we close out today, we have a giveaway. I love giveaways. So we are over 900 now in the group. Yay!
Yay!
So I think by the end of the month we can get to 1,000. So we have this giveaway happening. So it's simple. You'll be able to win a 30-minute strategy session with this month's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live sponsor, Catalyst Event Coaching. And we'll drop the information in the chat box. Plus, you'll be able to help us grow this group and grow our nonprofit enthusiast family to over 1,000. So I know we can do this. So all you got to do is go up to the corner where it says invite and invite just 10 friends over, or if you want to do more, invite at least 10 people into the group. So this is going to be going on up until 11:59 on Friday, April 21st. So you have until next week to do this, but I will say just take a moment right now, stop, go to invite, click 10 people that you know will benefit from the information in this group, and go ahead and send it so you got that done. We talked about that sense of completeness. So I did that, and then you'll be entered into the giveaway. So 11:59 on Friday, April 21st is when the last time you can do your invites. And then we will be announcing it Thursday, April 27th during our live session with Catalyst Events Coaching. Shamika will be coming on, and we'll be announcing who the winners for those strategy sessions are. So please go ahead, invite friends to the group. If you're catching us on replay, it's not too late. You have until next week to be able to do so, and we'll drop more information in the group as well. So let's go ahead and reach our 1,000 goal. So we'll keep watching it, but our goal is to at least hit 1,000 by the end of the month. Can we do it? I think we can. I think we really can. I'm
gonna congratulate us in advance.
Yes, let's celebrate in advance. I'm excited. I know we got this, and we're gonna get it. And we know the more individuals, the more nonprofit leaders that we have in this group, the more we're able to support one another and continue to grow together. So please, continue to invite individuals over. Don't let all of this, because in this group, thanks to our sponsor, this information that we give is no cost. The information that we provide is no cost to you all. You can always go to the guide section and catch past conversations, which we know how much coaching programs can be and all of that, but we're giving it to you here at no cost. So please don't keep this a secret or the best kept secret, just like, we don't want our nonprofits to be the best kept secret. Let's not keep this a secret. Please share it with others and go ahead and invite. All right. So that is all that we have for today.
That's it. I had a lot more that I wanted to say.
That's it. Well, I think you got to come back, and we're not going to wait a whole month, mate.
Oh, okay. Did I just walk into that one?
Yes. So
hey, listen, I'll be glad to come back for nonprofit. This is our life. We love this work. And so, guys, call us. Call us. We would be happy to hear from you. Trust me. Call us.
Call us. We can't wait to speak with you. So, all right, everyone. And next week, we're going to have Dr. Angela White-Jones will be, and I kind of shared in the group updates yesterday that some of our sessions we're going to be, just like for next week, we're going to do a pre-recording with her and drop the interview into the chat. So please, into the group, I'm sorry. So please make sure that you check that out. So we'll be dropping that next week. So we have Dr. Angela White-Jones from the University of Central Florida. We're going to continue the conversation on measurement and evaluation. So, all right.
Thank you again, Sheila.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.